This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 368 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's a special one. It's about my trip to Bangkok recently. So we're going back to Bangkok. It's a trip diary and it's a thoughtful travel scorecard. I've never done this before and I think it's going to be fun. Before I start, let me pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation where I'm recording this podcast. So I wanted to do a trip report about my recent experience in Bangkok and to also try to answer this kind of question, how can you be a thoughtful traveller on a 5-day part work, part leisure trip? So I'm going to take you through my experiences and, well, judge myself nicely because, of course, we're all just trying to do our best. I'm going to give myself a scorecard each day. But hopefully that'll give you some examples of ways we can be more thoughtful travellers on any kind of trip.
ผู้โดยสารโปรดทราบกรุณาเดินเข้าด้านของตัวรถไม่ยืนกีดขวางบริเวณประตูไม่ยืนพิงเสาโปรดจับห่วงเสาหรือราวขณะเดินทางขอบคุณค่ะ Attention please move inside the train with floor areas do not lean against stanchion and hold step or handle firmly while standing.
So that is, of course, an announcement from a Thai train. But before we get to Thailand, we have to leave home, obviously. Now, coming up to this trip, which was, well, we'll hear more about why I was in Bangkok as we go on, but essentially I was meeting up with Vincie from Rise Travel Institute, who was there for the Tourism Cares Meaningful Travel Summit. And I had planned this trip a couple of months in advance, but I was just anxious about it. There was lots of work on at home. I was fitting in this 5 days in between various teaching gigs and workshops, etc. I had to leave my kid and my cat, my kitten, in fact. It's the first time I've left her for at all, actually. So, it was all a bit busy and a bit stressful. And I actually haven't been on a plane all year. And I'm not a great flyer, and being out of the habit meant I was a bit anxious even about flying. But anyway, I still knew deep down that I would get there or at least get to the airport and then I would be fine. As always, I get to the airport early, well, as early as, reasonably possible without having to be there all day. Checked in. I always photograph my bag as it disappears because many years ago, well, more than 10 now, I suppose, I did lose a bag forever. And at that moment, I didn't have a photograph of my bag on hand. So I always photograph it and wave it goodbye and hope I see it again. Then I was able to relax and board my flight. Now, I actually had plans to do some work on the plane. I'd really organised myself to do that because I had so much work on. But then I boarded. I was flying Singapore Airlines, so Perth to Singapore and then Singapore to Bangkok. And I discovered that they had on the onboard entertainment, they had the season 3 of The White Lotus. And I had been very curious to watch it. And it was really perfect because that season is set in Thailand. And so, what else could I do? So I started binge watching that on the way there, and I knew that that would be my goal on all those flights because my dear friends Erin and Katie from the Curious Tourism podcast actually put out some White Lotus recap episodes earlier in the year. And of course, I hadn't listened to them because I had to watch White Lotus season 3 first.
Okay, Erin, we're here for a very special episode. Why are you and I talking right now?
We are talking because we felt it was time that we unpack the show, The White Lotus.
Yes, our favorite show.
My favorite part of why we're gathering, we're going to also identify the cringiest tourist moments in every episode, and we'll also try to give out a conscientious traveler award, which is going to be hard, but we'll try.
So I think 1 or 2 episodes into White Lotus, I landed at Changi Airport in Singapore. I had a pretty short layover this time, no time for a snack, but pay attention to my return journey because I will. Then not much later, I ended up in Bangkok at Suvarnabhumi Airport. Now, I have spent ages in queues at this airport in the past, but now, since my last visit to Thailand, they now have an online Thailand digital arrival card system. So I could do that from home before I got there and then just show proof of that. And obviously I was already in their system. And so it went much faster. So pleased about that. Then I could take the train, the airport link from the airport to a stop on the MRT. In fact, I went to Makasan and a quick walk over the pedestrian bridges there to Petraburi station, which is on the MRT, and it was a short ride from there to Lumpini and then a short walk to my hotel. So I'm always happy when I can take public transport anywhere, obviously, and especially in Bangkok because I arrived mid-afternoon, maybe 3-ish or so, towards 4 by the time I got to the hotel, and the traffic would have been really terrible and taken heaps longer than going by train. So much happier to take the train than a taxi. The trains are great in Thailand. Now, the only complaint I have is it's a weird thing. On that airport line, you have to pay by cash if you're a foreigner, and then there are some machines where you could pay for your ticket with cash, but I only had 1,000 baht notes and the machines didn't take that. So in the end, I actually had to line up and buy a ticket. A ticket there is a round token you put in at the gate and then put in again as you leave. So it's a little bit of a different system. Once I was off the airport line, it was easy on the MRT, etc. It's tap and go with my credit card. I love any place in the world that has that. It's so accessible for visitors from anywhere, and I really appreciate anywhere that does that. So got to my hotel. It was very, very exciting to finally meet in person Vincie, who is the founder of Rise Travel Institute. You'll have heard me talk about Rise and Vincie over the past 5 years. And I had not met Vincie in person despite our many, many, many hours of online conversations. I'm on the board for Rise, so apart from those meetings, we've had lots of personal, friendly chats as well. So it was super exciting to meet her. She had just finished up for the day with the outings that they'd done for the Meaningful Travel Summit for Tourism Cares. It was perfect timing. So briefly into the hotel and then straight out to dinner. Vincie had an uncle there from Hong Kong and his wife who's Thai, and they live in Bangkok part of the time. They took us out to a most delightful seafood dinner way out in the suburbs and then to their home. And how lovely is that on my first night in Bangkok to be invited into the home of some locals. It was so delightful. And in exchange for their delightful hospitality, I tried for the first time that really stinky fruit, durian. And Vincie actually recorded me while I was eating that durian. Is this a video or a...
It's a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is durian and it's fine.
It's good.
It's not my favourite fruit in the world, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's not like... Because some people really hate it.
It's nice. Yeah.
And they'd be like hiding or like they'd be out of the house, right? No. Okay. Yay!
So durian was nowhere near as bad as I'd expected. I wouldn't rush out to eat it, but yeah, nowhere near as bad as I thought. So that was the end of day one, and I want to give myself a score on my Thoughtful Travel scorecard. So tick for using public transport. Obviously, that's always a good thing to do. A tick for learning about a place through TV and movies. That's in my kind of before you go thoughtful travel framework. Obviously, the resort featured in White Lotus was a very different kind of experience of Thailand to what I was having in Bangkok, but actually just, you know, hearing the language again and getting into that kind of Thai mood, it kind of set the scene really well. So that was nice. Big tick for getting to know the locals. In this case, obviously, I was super lucky to have a friend who knows the locals. So that was a really lovely evening. So I score myself a 7 out of 10 for my Thoughtful Travel scorecard for day one. It would have been better if I could have taken a direct flight rather than have a layover in Singapore. There's a lot of, the emissions on a flight are significant at takeoff. So if you only have to take off once instead of twice, that's a lot better. And obviously a shorter flight if you're not having to divert a little bit. I couldn't this time, or didn't, let's say. The times didn't really work and it was a bit more expensive. So, 7 out of 10. On the whole, a pretty thoughtful day. On to day 2 of my Bangkok experience. I was very lucky to have a beautiful swim in the hotel pool. That's something that I really do enjoy. In the afternoon, I was really fortunate to be invited to take part in the Meaningful Travel Summit's education session. So it's a series of panels, etc. Super interesting, lots of really interesting people. And of course, in the breaks, etc., I got to meet a lot of cool people too. One highlight was listening to Alisara Sivayaton. She's the CEO of Civitel Hotel. And that Civitel is a luxury boutique hotel, but its stated aim, and it seems like it's actual, really doing it, its aim is to be the most sustainable boutique hotel in Bangkok. Alisara was talking about a lot of their strategies, including things like waste reduction, use of organic food and products, even growing some, carbon neutral certification, lots of good stuff. It's a kind of a family-owned company. And by chance, or actually probably by good research, Vincie had actually stayed at Civitel last year on a family trip to Bangkok, so she could vouch for it and was really excited to meet Alisara as well. There are also other short presentations at the education sessions about, for example, various community-based tourism projects, something that Thailand's, I think, for quite a long time been really good at. I've experienced quite a few examples of some great community-based tourism adventures, and also animal welfare issues. Yeah, a few things. And it finished up with a kind of a roundup by Tourism Care's CEO, Greg Takahara. And yeah, a great talk. He's a really interesting guy. And also a chance to think about and then make our own commitments in writing to an action to drive a positive impact in travel and tourism. So that was really, really worth thinking about. Later on that day, late evening, we had the fun part. We had an unofficial outing with the Tourism Cares people. We were invited along to a drag show at Stranger Bar. Heaps and heaps of fun. And of course, I found it culturally really interesting. I know you probably also know Thailand's known for, well, in some ways at least, a more open attitude to gender and sexuality issues than many other parts of the world. I actually went down a bit of a rabbit hole to learn more about it, and I like the explanation that Thai culture talks about PET, which is a spectrum of identities blending different degrees of masculinity and femininity, rather than our kind of typical very rigid distinctions in many Western cultures. So, yeah, that was fun. The good news is that Thailand finally legalised same-sex marriage in January this year. It was only the second Asian country to do so after Taiwan did in 2019. Now, after our experience at the Strange Bar, we used a tuk-tuk to get home to the hotel. This was an interesting situation to think about cost and bartering and, so on. One of our group approached a tuk-tuk driver nearby just to ask the cost back to our hotel. The driver said 250 baht, and we just hopped on. Honestly, I had, not even been in the country much more than 24 hours, and I hadn't got my head back into considering the exchange rate. I honestly had no idea how much it was. And it's still like a small amount of money, about 12 Australian dollars, 8 or 9 US dollars. But later we realised it was almost triple what a Grab or a taxi would have cost. So that was, kind of maybe we should have bartered. But should we? I don't know. I always find it really, really tricky to decide when to negotiate and barter about prices in other countries. I find it just a culturally difficult conundrum. Anyway, finished that day with a bottle of wine, chatting with some new friends from the US, and lots of really lovely connections. So my day 2 thoughtful travel scorecard. Well, part of the day was on about education. How much more thoughtful can you get? And of course, networking with people at the Tourism Cares Summit. Infinitely useful. Great convos. I'm sure lots more to come. And I'll have some of those people on as guests on the podcast as well in the future. Mostly we walked to places and used some public transport. So, not too bad on there. I would drop my score a little bit for the hotel. It's a bit more luxury than my usual standard and not particularly focused on sustainability. But in our favour, we did say no to room cleaning or fresh towels, so didn't kind of use any additional resources. So that's something. But with the kind of the education and networking side of it, and so many conversations about how to be a thoughtful and responsible traveller, I scored 8 out of 10 for day 2. Okay, on to days 3 and 4. I'm putting them together because that was the weekend and we took it a bit easier in some ways. And, well, I'm just putting them together. So on Saturday, we had an easy start to the day and then went out for lunch. So we being Vincie and I, because we'd put aside that weekend to hang out together. We started off with a quick Grab ride. So Grab is like Uber in Thailand. And Vincie had found a restaurant called Home Cooked Phung Pha, and she picked it because it had a good reviews, high rating, and it was an excellent choice. We got there and it was a small restaurant, maybe 5 or 6 tables at most, had a story. On the menu there was an explanation from the chef and owner saying how they'd learned to cook from their mother and then from travelling to every region of Thailand, and some of the promises on the menu were things like all meats come from trusted safe sources and top quality farms, and also we use premium jasmine rice, though it costs more, we keep our prices affordable for everyone. Every meal at Phung Pha feels just like something made at home. I really love that. So that was a lovely, lovely lunch. And then we walked back via the back streets. I really love in Bangkok that you can just walk a block off the main drag, off the really busy, noisy Bangkok streets, and it can be calm and very green and just gorgeous. I'll put some photos in the show notes actually, because I just really enjoyed that walk and to see, what life was going on in those streets. It was all about food, obviously, because later that day we went out to dinner with a Tourism Cares colleague, and we went to dinner at a place called Som Tum De. Just delicious, delicious food as always. Then we randomly decided let's find a place for a cocktail. None of us were ready to call it a night. And Google Maps suggested this place, which kind of felt like, we're in a funny back street here and a bit of a dead end almost. But then there was kind of a little hotel and a cocktail bar called Rogue Affair at the top. More like a speakeasy, I guess. That was heaps of fun. Just nice to go where probably tourists don't usually go. In fact, there was nobody else there, but there weren't really any other tourists around either. So that was fun. So that was a great Saturday. And then on Sunday, we got up and Vincie and I headed north to visit Ayutthaya. So if you don't know about Ayutthaya, it's the ruins of the historic ancient capital, like ruins of temples and palaces. It's about an hour north of Bangkok. It's kind of reminiscent of Siem Reap's Angkor Wat in some ways. I have long wanted to go there. I've heard about it on several of my Bangkok trips, but I'd not had time until this time. So that was just a fabulous day out. I'm actually going to record an episode only about our Ayutthaya outing and some of its connections with being a good, thoughtful traveller with Vincie. So I won't say anything more on that. You'll have to watch out for that in a few episodes' time. We got back to Bangkok and then Vincie wanted to go to the supermarket because she loves to stock up on chili and other Thai sauces and snacks and stuff to take back to the US. And I always love a foreign supermarket. So off we went. We went to Big C. Vincie knew that Big C was a good supermarket to head to, and we came out with a trolley full. It was just such fun, and I have been working my way through my packets of khao soy sauce. Love khao soy, and some snacks as well. Brought some snacks home for my teenager and for me as well. And yeah, great fun to explore the aisles. You learn a lot about a country from its supermarkets. And final dinner, we went out with some friends of Vincie's from when she spent extended times in Bangkok over the years. So all local Thai people, great people, another lovely local restaurant we would not find. I was definitely the only non-Asian person in that in a very large restaurant. Great food, great people, great fun. So my scorecard again. I checked into some of these things. For example, our dinner, Som Tum De, the Saturday night dinner, that restaurant has a Thai owner, and I think the speakeasy we went to does as well, but I couldn't quite confirm that. And that's something that's often difficult to find out on the internet. Probably something I should ask more often when I am there, if it's possible, because it is nice to know, is this owned by someone local? Is the money going to stay here? Or is it owned by some big conglomerate and the money's going offshore, etc.? It's always great to be able able to more easily confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that all of our places were locally owned. Obviously, going to Ayutthaya, I give myself a tick for that because I think learning about the history and culture of a place is really important. Supermarket shopping, yes, another tick, and Big C is Thai owned. So happy about that as well. Some more local friends, thanks to Vincie, so doing pretty well. Now, a slight deduction for our transport. We tended to use Grabs or taxis more than public transport over the weekend, not exclusively. And we did try to take the train to Ayutthaya, but we failed. We'll explain more about that in our special episode soon. So on the whole, I've given myself 7 out of 10. So on to day 5 and the last day, and I had to head home. So had the morning there, but before lunch I was on the trains going back to the airport and admiring the busy traffic on the way, but glad I was hopping onto a train.
Train to Suvarnabhumi Airport. Next station, Formark Station. Passengers can connect to SRT Eastern Line from this station. รถไฟฟ้าขบวนนี้ไปท่าอากาศยานสุวรรณภูมิสถานีต่อไปสถานีหัวหมากท่านสามารถเปลี่ยนเส้นทางไปรถไฟสายตะวันออกได้ที่สถานีนี้
Back onto the plane, and I was happy to watch the rest of White Lotus, and then the following week I binge listened to the Curious Tourism recap episodes, so that was lots of fun. It was also nice to see that Singapore Airlines have started to use much more sustainable food packaging. Obviously not on all routes, but on 2 of my 4 flights, they had switched away from all the plastic that you usually get with an aeroplane meal, and the meals came in cardboard packaging, very well-designed cardboard packaging. Everything was stayed hot or cold, whichever it was meant to. Yeah, it was really cool. I landed in Changi Airport, and this time I think it was about 2.5 hours layover between flights, so not too long, just enough to stretch my legs and do a couple of my favourite things. For example, going to the snack shop called Heavenly Wang for kaya butter toast. It's my absolute must-do in Changi Airport. If you don't know, kaya is like coconut jam, and so then it's like a very squished piece of toast with a big wad of butter and the jam on the top. And just so delicious. Makes me feel very happy. For the first time, I also went to the butterfly garden in Changi Airport. I think I've now seen kind of all of the big features of Changi, but it is a really cool airport. If you get stuck anywhere, it is the place to be. Finally got home early the next night, about 1 a.m, 2 a.m, I don't know, sometime after midnight. Not much sleep, and then straight back to teach the following day. But what was delightful was I just felt so revitalized, rejuvenated, just light and happy. So a real contrast to the anxiety that I left with, and actually more happier, lighter, really, just in a good mood for ever since, to be honest. But certainly that first week or so being away had just really given me, just a really nice boost. So my day 5 thoughtful travel scorecard, as on the way over, same thing, a direct flight would have been better. I will mark myself down today too for doing that, and also for spending such a short time there for me. Usually I would try and stay longer. I would try and travel more slowly, but sometimes it is just impossible to spend longer. I had work commitments. It was just the 5 days was the longest I could stay. But I'm also not beating myself up too badly, because those were actually the first flights I'd taken all year. So I'm not going too bad. In Changi Airport, I'm giving myself a local food tick for my kaya toast. I think Heavenly Wang is locally owned. I'm not sure. The butterfly garden, it was pretty, but I'm not really convinced from an ethical animal perspective if it's okay, but I actually can't find much evidence either way. It's just a hunch, and there were quite a few dead butterflies around, which, I'd guess that's just life, but it did give me a weird feeling. I also took an Uber home from the airport when I landed back in Perth. I'd arrived after midnight, and the train takes about an hour or more instead of a quick less than half an hour drive. And actually, I think the last train seems to leave at 1:14 a.m, so I think I would have missed that one anyway. I could do better there. So on the whole, for this last day, 5 out of 10 for my thoughtful travel scorecard. Now, the maths nerd in me wants to average out my scores, so I've done the maths and scoring myself 68% as an average thoughtful travel score for those days. So I'm going to try and keep this scorecard for future trips and we'll see how I go. But could be worse, but definitely room for improvement as well. So that's it for my roundup of my Bangkok trip. Thank you very much for listening to episode 368. I am going to leave a bunch of links in the show notes. So one will be a Google map, my maps of the places I've mentioned and all the places I went, just so you can check them out. I'll also leave a link to Tourism Cares. That's tourismcares.org. Lots of great resources there. And I was really grateful to be able to be involved in some of their activities. I will also leave a link to the White Lotus recap episodes on the Curious Tourism podcast in case you are curious as well. And I have 3 episodes in the past about my travels in Thailand, and I'll leave some links to those. Episode 304 was another time in Bangkok. Episode 302 about my experiences in the north in Chiang Rai. And episode 111 from some years back, one of my very favourite trips to Thailand when I was in a different part of the north in the provinces of Phrae and Nan. Much less visited still to this day, but really, really cool. I've also written a post in Substack about why I keep returning to Thailand and the concept in general of revisiting a place multiple times. So I'll leave a link to that as well. Don't forget, come and chat with us in the Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just search for Thoughtful Travellers on those platforms and sign up at thoughtfultravel.substack.com for the Thoughtful Travellers newsletter. A bunch of links here, and I will also include some photos in the show notes. So you can find all of that at notaballerina.com/368. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.